Equator coffees, just like our company, Point Reyes Farmstead, is 100% women owned. And we will be getting into some dialogue about that at the final third of today's hour together. The first part of our conversation will be centered around our two companies' histories and stories. And then the middle portion will be centered around the cheese and coffee pairings. Now, having said that, if you choose to dive into your cheese and coffee, please do so and have fun with it, because we don't take any of it too seriously. We want everyone to have a great time this hour. And some of you I know are using this as your lunch hour. So we don't want anyone to go hungry, that's for sure. So without further ado, oh wait, I forgot some housekeeping here. So we are on Zoom and we are on Facebook Live right now. So we are simulcasting, which is really exciting. We are going to be taking Q&A throughout the event on the chat window for Zoom. And then if you just want to post in questions on Facebook Live. We have a great producer, Annie Cockcroft, is behind the scenes. So if you hear a voice that doesn't look like it's coming from one of us, that's Annie. And she'll be giving us some of the questions. We will repeat them so everyone can hear what they are before we answer, as well as some of the questions that are really easily answered by Annie. She will just type into the chat window and or on Facebook Live. But this is really meant to be a dialogue with us and you guys. So please use the chat window. And at the very end, we will open it up to a final Q&A for the last 5 to 7 minutes or so. So having said that, quick introduction. Devora is the Director of Coffee Culture at Equator. Diana acts as our CFO and co-owner here at Point Reyes Farmstead. And Lynn is our COO and leads our sales team. I am our CMO, so I'm in charge of marketing. Lynn's in sales, Diana's finance. So we've got all different skill sets here for our sister and women-owned business. And to get started, Diana is going to talk a little bit about our history and how we came to be. Go ahead.
Hi, so welcome everybody. Just want to give you a little bit of history, how we came to be a women-owned business. Our parents purchased our farm in 1959, so we've been on the farm here for over 60 years. And during the next 40 years, our parents produced cow's milk and sold the milk to a local processor. We grew up here on the farm. All of us grew up on the dairy farm surrounded by the cows, but weren't exactly all that interested in making that our livelihood. Our mother really encouraged us to leave the farm and get educated and go out into the world and figure out what we wanted to do with our careers. There is one other sister I will mention, Karen, shout out to her, living in Arizona, living her best life in Arizona. And so the four of us, grew up here, no brothers. And you can actually see a picture of us in the 70s, late 70s, I think, there together. So as I mentioned, all of us left the farm, got educated, in varying degrees, mainly business degrees, and then kind of went off and were forging our way in different areas, kind of worked out where we are today, as Jill mentioned, as far as our roles within the company. I was in finance and banking, and Lynn was in sales and operations, and Jill was in PR and marketing. So it was a little bit by design. Then when we came back together, we were all focused on different areas of business. So in the mid 90s, mid to late 90s, our parents had us around the table and said, hey, we're getting closer to retirement. I don't think they really, at least our father was really going to retire, but said, hey, we have this idea and want to approach all of you about starting a cheese business, something where we can produce a product and bring it directly to the consumer. So that just spurred a lot of conversation amongst the family and what that would look like and how we would get started. And so in August of 2000 was when we produced our first wheel of cheese. Original Blue was that first cheese and was the only cheese that was made for the next 9 years, and really kind of slowly built up the business all across the country. And then started adding new products late in 2009 era. And not all of us were involved in the beginning. I can say I was the last one to join the business later in the 2000s. And around that time too, our parents started talking to us about transitioning the ownership of the farm. And so we did an estate transfer in 2010, where then we became the owners of the business. So for the last 10 years now, we've been a fully women-owned business. And then a couple of years ago, we looked at pursuing a certification from the Women-Owned Business Council. And so in 2019, it's a little bit of a laborious project to go through that, but we were able and successfully received our certification as a women-owned business. And recognized for that, where we could kind of share different practices and network with other like-minded businesses like Equator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that kind of brings us to today. I don't know, I'm probably missing a lot of things in between there, but just trying to give kind of a...
That was a lot, yeah. And we just celebrated our 20th anniversary in cheese. So a lot of celebrations this year. Mm-hmm. But the women's side, which I know we're going to talk more about, has been an area that, you know, from the beginning has been so important to us, because when we started with the company, and Jill and I were in that together with our parents back in really 1999, when we were starting to put the plant together, we were raising our young families. And so we could relate to women having that balance in life between work and raising a family. And over the last 20 years, it's been a big focus of ours to support our employees through their journey as women in business and managing a healthy lifestyle and balance there. And so today we have over 55% of our employees are women, 64% are minority. And it's something that we put a lot of attention and investment into as far as programs and our philanthropic charities. So yeah,
we'll get more into that at the final end of our presentation. But Devorah, now we would like to hear the Equator story and your women founded background.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so happy to be here today. As I mentioned, I'm the director of coffee culture here at Equator. I've been with Equator for the last 10 years, and my role means I get to do really fun stuff like this, like share and taste coffee with people. It's my absolute favorite thing to do. And the story of Equator, we are Marin founded women, or Marin, we've been in Marin for 25 years, since 1995. Helen Russell and Brooke McDonald started roasting coffee in a garage in Corte Madera. It's kind of that typical entrepreneurial story. Hey, we want to make a product. We want to work for ourselves. Being women in the coffee industry, especially at that time, they were really in the minority. They are also queer women. There's very few queer women-owned coffee companies still in the States 25 years later. So they founded this company. This is Brooke roasting on a tiny tabletop roaster. They founded this company because they wanted a place where they could bring their whole selves to work. And very quickly, we're joined by their best friend, Maureen McHugh. That's the three of them in the photo there. And they form that kind of triad that you three ladies mentioned, right? You need people, product, and process. So Brooke is our master roaster. She still oversees the roasting department. Helen is the driving force behind our sales team and growing our business. And Maureen is operations. She's got the Green MBA. She keeps us, women certified, B Corp certified, NGLCC certified business. Really keeps, everyone paid and coffee moving out. So we roast in Marin County. That's how we have this relationship. We're right here. But we buy coffee from all around the world. We are called Equator Coffee because coffee grows along that equatorial belt. So we are in this kind of unique space of purchasing a product made by really focused artisanal coffee growers and crafting something special from it. So I'm excited for you to try the coffees. And as a green coffee purchaser, because we're women owned, we focused on buying from women in a lot of ways. We were the first California roaster to sign on to buy fair trade coffee. We really believe in the fair trade system. But beyond that, we try to buy directly. So pre-COVID, we're visiting most of the coffee farms we're buying from every year, making sure that the folks who are actually farming and growing the coffee have an active voice in our supply line, that we're coming to an agreement that makes sense as far as purchase price, amount of coffee, quality of coffee. That needs to be a two-way dialogue rather than just, hey, we're going to buy this from you, right? We want to run not a traditional supply line. We want to be collaborative with folks we're buying from. So I'm excited to talk a little more about one of our women's projects as we get tasting, but it's something that's always been important to us just by the nature of being female founded. We want to invest in women around the world.
Awesome. Deborah, I just love your title, Director of Coffee Culture. Can you expand a little bit more on your day-to-day activities other than, leading presentations and tastings like this?
Yeah, other than this fun stuff, I do a lot of internal communication between our companies. So I get to sit in a lot of meetings and make sure folks are talking to each other, because we do have specialized teams focusing on our retail department, wholesale department, marketing, and our roastery. So a lot of what I do is make sure everyone knows what's going on in the other departments. And then also I get to communicate out to the greater coffee world, right? Specialty coffee is a great community. We really have a lot of pride of being active members of the specialty coffee community. And when I say specialty coffee, I mean that higher grade of coffee, that coffee that you are gonna pull over to get, right? That you're gonna look online and order from across the country, not just, the diner stuff that you kind of get, it's ubiquitous everywhere, grocery store coffee, that's regular coffee. Specialty coffee is a vibrant community, and being a part of that is really important. So I work with our competitive team. We have competitive baristas and roasters and participate that way. Make sure we're taking part in the trade shows and educational conferences that happen within the coffee community.
Got it. I think there's a lot of folks that are probably really jealous of your job right now. And there's so many parallels between the specialty coffee industry and the specialty cheese community. We don't even like to refer to ourselves as an industry. It's more of a community of craftspeople from around the world that too are trying to express that differentiation between what we do versus the commercial cheese companies, you find in other parts of the country. Okay. Without further ado, I think we need to taste some cheese and coffee. So Lynn's going to lead the tasting on our end. So for those of you who have attended some of our other classes, it's usually about 4 more hours later. It's about 5 o'clock, and we're doing pairings with wine or spirits. And we're so excited today because we are huge coffee lovers and huge. As a matter of fact, I drink coffee all day and all night, and I can sleep. I know Jill can't sleep if she has it late at 3 night. o'clock.
But so this is great timing for this either way, any time of day or night for you. So similar to when we're tasting cheeses or you're tasting any type of libation and coffee, we don't want to overpower our palates. And so we really start from going mildest to strongest. And we're going to do that today as well, starting with the coffee. And there's, the experience of pairing things, you're looking for a few different things. We, number one, are going to use all of our senses. So we're going to be smelling. That's the first sense that we're going to use. We're going to be tasting. We're going to be, really experiencing the texture in your mouth, the overall feel, and then that aftertaste as well. And with cheese, I'm always touching it anyway and making sure that it's at room temperature. So hopefully you guys have had the cheese out. Cheese goes through a process called blooming, similar with, I'll use wine as an example because you want the product to come to room temperature so that the flavors really come out. Because if it's too cold, you're gonna have, it's not gonna have all the flavor attributes that are really innate into that product. Now with coffee, obviously, we're gonna have this hot, So you wanted to make sure that the cheese, hopefully you guys have it at room temperature so there's not too much of a contrast and you can really taste the flavors. Whenever we're tasting, once again, we're going to start by smelling, but we're going to start by sipping and trying the product when Devorah is going to walk us through each coffee and all of the flavor characteristics there. And then we're going to smell the cheese, we're going to taste the cheese, and then we'll go back and forth because you're going to get different experiences. Maybe if you have a sip of coffee and then cheese, or cheese and then coffee and finish. Devorah, do you want to add anything to the helpful notes there?
No, I just, it's funny because we kind of do the opposite in coffee, whereas we want the coffee to cool down a little from room temperature. So you're not shocked by it in your mouth and you can really roll it around as you're tasting. So temperature is important.
What advice, Devorah, do you have for people who always like to have cream or milk in their coffee? Because we're trying this black because we really want to taste all those coffee flavors.
Yeah, I mean, I believe coffee is really personal, and if you enjoy cream and sugar in your coffee, that's great, and that's how you should enjoy your coffee for pleasure. Doing a tasting is different, right? Doing a tasting, you want to see the flavors that are intrinsic in the coffee. So definitely start with it black, and then if later you want to add something, that's fine, but I would start with it black. And as you grow your coffee palate, I would make that a practice. Give it a sip before you add. Because if you're drinking coffee from somewhere else, you might not need as much sugar. Coffee really should be sweet without sugar. But taste it before you dump it in.
Yeah, good to know. And I think what we're going to find in these pairings is that the cheese is going to act as the creamer or the sugar. And we'll get to that as we go. Yeah. So great. We're going to start with the first coffee, everybody. Devorah, I'll let you lead. This is the Columbia for Peace.
Yeah, we call this a coffee for peace because we bought this coffee through an auction. It was a joint project with USAID and the government of Colombia and the Colombia National Coffee Board to encourage folks to grow coffee in regions that were formerly producing agricultural products for drugs, right? Cartel-controlled regions, hey, grow coffee. To do so, you got to get a good price for it. So it's got to be specialty grade coffee, right, to make that transition. So I'm swirling the coffee in my cup, aerating it a little bit.
Don't spill. So I'm thinking Narcos.
Yeah.
And then we're going to save the world with coffee.
Right, absolutely. I mean, being part of a legal trade can be much more stable as long as it's a economically viable livelihood. So we did pay a good price for this coffee, bought it through an auction, and it's a project we really believe in. So swirling and smelling. And then when I sip, I'm going to slurp. If you've ever gotten in trouble for slurping your soup, good job. Do that now. Really aerate it as you drink the coffee.
I do notice it
a little bit. It's different when you aerate, right? You get a lot more depth to your flavor. And I feel like you notice the delicate notes in your coffee more when you aerate because those aromatics are really volatile and you're really like smelling it retronasally as you sip. So we always slurp coffee when we're tasting. And this is a very delicate coffee. It's juicy. I get notes of citrus. That kind of citric acid makes it feel really juicy in my mouth. Some delicate florals too. This is a light and sparkly coffee, which is why I love it with the Gouda.
Yeah, I'm noticing that you had described it as fruity and the citrus notes and the floral previously when we were doing our tastings, and it like enhances it so much when you aerate it. This is a great idea.
Devorah, are you looking for anything visually, in how the coffee sits, I guess, and the color and the sheen or anything in your finished brew?
I don't in this type of tasting, right? When we are doing what we call a coffee cupping, which we do to really evaluate roast level and how things are roasted, I will look at colors sometimes. Coffee has a wide range of browns, right? Some are more red, some are more yellow, and a lot of that has to do with the roasting process. For a tasting like this, it's not super applicable. especially because both of my coffees were filtered. So we filtered out, I used a paper filter brewing method. So I filtered out all the oils and coffee grounds from it. So that is the part where we differ from wine. We use a lot of wine analogies in coffee tasting because folks have most of the time done more wine tastings than coffee tastings, right? But yeah, I don't look for color particularly, except for to enjoy it.
I'm really enjoying this one. And because it is, I guess you could consider it a milder, medium body coffee. It's once again, day or afternoon coffee or at nighttime. We paired this with our Gouda, our classic Gouda, traditional Gouda, or Gouda, as a lot of people from the Netherlands translate Gouda, Gouda. This is a pasteurized cheese. It is aged around 18 months. And this is, once again, it's got the classic flavor attributes of aged Gouda. It's got that butterscotch note. It's got that caramel flavor to it. So it's got some depth and richness to it. And but yet it's still very creamy. When we age cheeses, they tend to dry out in the aging process, especially when you're talking 1-2 years out. And our cheesemaker does a wonderful job of still retaining some of that moisture. So it's a creamy style. However, you're going to taste some crystals. That's those little pops, that little crunch. This is typical in an aged cheese such as a Parmesan or a Gouda, and that just adds to more complexity and interest when we're talking about texture and how it is in your mouth and how that feels. So remember, smell first. What are you smelling? Sweetness, nuttiness, that butterscotch. And then when you taste it, you're experiencing the crystals in there, which, by the way, are amino acids. It's the protein that is surrounded by some air pockets, and it's making those proteins like little crunch, little pop rocks almost. And it just kind of wakes up your whole experience when you're tasting it. And then try it with some of the coffee. And go back and forth with tasting it, tasting the coffee, then tasting the cheese. And it brings out, when we look at pairing with cheese is, we use whole milk. So you're tasting a lot of richness and fat and just that pure luxury of cheese. And what you want to balance that out is the acidity that you're getting from this coffee. And so it kind of just elevates both of the cheese and the coffee with its acidity. You get that citrus, that floral note, and it complements really well with the nuttiness in the cheese. Devorah, what do you think?
Yeah, I find it makes both of them sweeter. It's like when I have the cheese and then go back to the coffee, that first breath in, it's just sweetness, it's caramel, it's really, really delicious. Almost like toasted nuts.
This is an example to me where this is the sugar in the coffee. This is what sweetens the whole experience. It's definitely doesn't bring out the savory notes. It brings out the sweetness of the cheese and the coffee.
Yes.
You get a lot of caramel notes in there too. And with pairing it with the coffee, it just kind of elevates both
Is it
cheese
kind of
and
like a caramel
frappuccino
thing, or what do they have?
caramel latte.
Latte.
The milk and the caramel and the coffee. That's great.
Yeah. So this is perfect for lunchtime or dessert.
Or for us, it is lunch.
We often talk about cheese courses that are the perfect dessert to any meal because you put it out, you don't have to bake or do anything. Well, think of that with coffee. I know we talk about that with like port wine, but coffee is and cheese platter is a great way to end a lunch or a brunch or dinner as the dessert course. So don't be afraid to try that. Great. So is everybody, do you guys like this pairing? Thumbs up. Is everybody enjoying it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
And use the chat window. Tell us what you're experiencing and tell us how you brewed your coffee and if that has any, bearing on your thoughts.
Yeah, Deborah, real quick, do you prefer this to be in a French press, in like a regular craft coffee maker? What's the best way, and what's the number of grounds that you like to grind your coffee to?
Yeah, so for this one, I did end up doing pour over for both of them. I did think about actually using a French press on the Sumatra because it's such a big, heavy coffee. I know we'll talk more about that in a second, but press pot coffee I really like. French press or press pot coffee I really like when I'm in the mood for something big flavors. It's kind of oily, has a big mouthfeel. When I want coffee to be a little cleaner, right, more juicy, easier to drink, I definitely go for something with a paper filter. So this is just a simple pour over cone, a 1 cup. There's many versions of this out there, but they're all similar. They're all using a paper filter. I don't think there's a best way to brew coffee. What's important is making sure your water is hot enough. So a lot of home brewers, those typical Mr. Coffee machines that you set on your counter, aren't brewing with hot enough water a lot of the time. So if you are buying good beans, but you notice your coffee is still tasting sour and just not as good as what you get at a cafe, and you're brewing on one of those coffee brewers or a Keurig brewer, you're probably brewing just a little bit cool, right? And so if you use something where you can control the temperature of the water more, you'll get better results. I also do recommend grinding fresh. You'll notice we sent out whole bean coffee. I hope that wasn't an issue for anyone. I hope you all were able to grind the coffee. It just makes such a dramatic improvement. The number one thing you can do to make better coffee at home is grinding fresh. Buy your beans fresh too, but I would say even beyond that, grind fresh. And then I always brew on a scale. I want to be accurate with how much coffee and water I'm using. So I like my coffee actually brewed a little bit weaker. I feel like it opens up the flavors. So for every 1 gram of coffee, I do 16 grams of water. If you're just scooping at home, it's about 2 tablespoons for every 5 or maybe 6 ounces, if you like it a little weaker, of water.
It's good to know. These are great tips.
Great question. I think we had a question in the chat. Does this coffee, as well as the next coffee, do they come in decaf versions?
Not exactly the same coffees are available in decaf for these two.
I'm sure that people can go to your website to see your decaf options.
Yeah, and we pay a lot of attention to our decaf coffees. Decaf should be good, should be drinkable, should be flavorful. We always have what we would call a single origin coffees. These are both single origin, so from one farm. And we always have a single origin, excellent decaf on our menu because I like to drink coffee in the evening, but I'm not going to do the caffeine. So we make sure we've got your back when it comes to decaf.
Got it. Okay.
Let's dive into the Sumatra, because this one, when I smell it, I love it. It reminds me of when I'm thinking about baking in the afternoon and I'm pulling out some bittersweet chocolate bars to make something. It just smells like that deep chocolate on the bittersweet swirl.
Absolutely, I would say even like unsweet.
Okay.
Also some earthiness in there. Sumatran coffees are known for their earthy components, which sometimes can be too much. And hey, I don't want mushrooms in my coffee, right? We tend to go for a little lighter on the earthy side. So I think dark chocolate, baking cocoa is a really good call in this coffee. Mm-hmm. And also fresh earth or kind of freshly chipped wood or like that.
Got a bitterness, but it's a pleasant bitterness to it. It's that bittersweet chocolate kind of cocoa powder.
Yeah, this is a good example of how coffee can be bitter without it like coating the back of your throat, right? It's not unpleasant, doesn't hang out, but it is bitter. And this is from a women's group. So we call this the Queen Ketiara. This is from a cooperative in Sumatra. And we pay more to buy specifically from the female members of the co-op. So we pay a premium that the women then decide what to spend that premium on collectively. so they're able to invest in infrastructure in their own, business acumen, right? So we really believe in buying from women's groups whenever we can.
That's great.
I love it.
So we have our newest queen, shall I say?
Yes.
Our newest cheese, and this is Quinta. So you all received this in your gift box. And for those of you who are joining us on Facebook Live that did not get the cheese pack, this is our newest cheese that is just going into distribution in the next couple of weeks. So it's not available most places. It is available online right now with this gift pack. But this is it looks very different, obviously, from all of our other cheeses. Quinta is a soft ripened bloomy rind. And we talk about bloomy rind, you're seeing all of that white fuzzy mold on the outside. That is normal. That is called candidum, which is a white mold that helps the proteins in the fat break down and create a really creamy style on the inside. And so you're probably wondering, how do I get into this Quinta? So I'm going to show you how to cut into it. There is a spruce bark wrapped around the outside to help give this cheese structure, because when you cut into it, you'll see what I'm talking about. The soft ripened is very soft, and as it ages, it becomes even softer. So what we like to do is cut the top off. So you're going to cut the top, and then you're going to peel it back. So yeah, here we go. And you can even, I'm going to talk about the bay leaf on top in a minute. So I know you're all dying to jump into this one. So you can see as we take the top off, and you can see there's a really nice custardy ribbon on the inside of the soft ripened. So Quinta is our nod to our mother and our mom's side of the family. Giacomini, like Jill said, is our maiden name. So much of what we talk about, if you know Point Reyes Farmstead, is our Italian side, because that's where the dairy legacy is coming from. But our mother's maiden name is Ferreira, and that is 100% Portuguese. So this is our tribute to our mom and the Ferreira side of the family. And in Portugal, in Portuguese, a quinta means farmstead. It's more commonly referred to as a vineyard or a winery, but the essence of what and definition of what farmstead is that you use the products on your land. It's full quality control. Everything stays within that property. Similar to an estate-grown vineyard, farmstead definition is that we use our own cow's milk right here on the property. The cows graze off of the property. We have consistency year-round. We have a closed herd, so everything is about that quality control and the consistency in that year-round. We're not purchasing other sources of milk that go into this cheese. It all comes straight from our property here. And then, of course, our milking parlor is only about 50 yards from our creamery. The milk goes straight into the vat. It's not transported outside of this property for this cheese, and so that qualifies it as a farmstead product. We wanted to also give it a sense of place and a taste of place. So as you can see, the top is adorned with a bay laurel leaf. And the bay laurel trees are indigenous to West Marin, and they dot our landscape here on the farm. So we wanted to have this as a little crest. We think it's a fabulous presentation, especially if you're having a cheese course or you're bringing this cheese as a hostess gift. It's just a beautiful cheese to present. We've also steeped our bark. Once again, not edible. It just acts as the structure, but yet it can infuse some flavor of woodsiness, earthiness. The closer on the inside that you scrape towards that bark, you'll get that little bit stronger, a little bit bitter, similar to the coffee. But we steeped that with the bay laurel leaf to give it some herbaceousness. So a lot is going on here with this cheese. And lastly, we do want to also do a little nod to the people who make this cheese. And so quinta means fifth in Spanish, and it is the fifth core cheese in our lineup. And it is, we want to reflect on our Spanish and Mexican heritage here in our Latinx community and our team members that actually make this cheese. So we want to recognize our mom's side in Portugal, our Latinx cheesemakers that make this cheese. And I think it's just it's feminine too. We talked about this.
Yeah, we like to refer to her as a her. Yes, it's our most female cheese. But I do want to say, for those of you that follow us on social media, last week we profiled an employee, a staff member, Michi, and she's actually the first woman to lead up the Quinta under the direction of Cuba Hemmerling, our head cheesemaker. But she's one of our Quinta cheesemakers. So this is a women-made cheese right now, and we're really proud of that. So
yeah. This cheese, it's flavors that now go ahead and smell it. We have a little bit in our dish here, so to make it, because as I mentioned, you let it sit out at room temperature. It's going to become, more runny, and this is, I have to say, this is a little on the cold side. But what you want is, you can see it's kind of ribbony. And it's just so luxurious.
Spoon it, spread it, dip into it.
It has a lot of buttermilk notes up front, especially at the younger age. It's got a little bit of like a brioche bread in there, a little bit of vanilla flavor. And then as it ages, you're going to get more mushroomy notes. You can eat the rind on the top, and you're going to get a lot of button mushroom. So that is edible, just not the bark on the outside. And then as it gets older, it's going to go more mustardy and become more woodsy, earthy. So depending on how you like it. You can even put it like in a crock or on a cookie sheet and put it in the oven for a little bit. And that will create a warmth to it, heat it up, once again, becoming a lot more herbaceous and earthy, little umami flavors. And then it becomes like you dip bread into it.
It becomes its own self-contained fondue.
Yeah. So, right. But what we're going to achieve here today is what we like to call, this is going to be your cream in your coffee. So go back, let's smell the coffee again, taste the coffee by itself, smell the cheese, eat the cheese by itself, and then go back and forth.
This is such a bigger coffee, right? We taste it more in our mouth, bigger body. And I've been digging into the cheese this whole time. It's incredible, going back and forth.
So talk about full flavored in your cheese. This is just pure, like full fat flavor. It's luxury. It's has just that custard texture in your mouth, and the coffee with it. It's like, ooh, that bittersweet chocolate combined with it. It is cream and coffee together. I love this combination. This is a great pick.
I love it too. I almost feel like we could do coffee from 2 different regions of Sumatra and 2 different ages of the Quinta, and just really geek out, because I love the hint of herbal in here, and thinking about it getting more woodsy, more mushroomy, more herbal. Sounds like really fun to play with.
Right. And once again, if you heat this up in the oven, it would be interesting to try with the warm coffee as well. So really nice.
This combination really stands in for a dessert to me. I mean, it's almost like I'm thinking like pot de creme or creme brulee, that's just got these coffee notes. Yes.
Yeah. So what do you guys think of this one? Do you guys like it?
Yeah, thumbs up. What do we think? Or tell us in the chat window.
Nice. Some good thumbs up there.
Yeah. And this is what I love about this is, sometimes when we think of coffee, we think just, oh, coffee's coffee, or black coffee is black coffee. But this is a great example of really paying attention to those flavor notes and the differentiations between each of these different regions where the coffee comes from and the flavors that come out of this. So very exciting. Now, lastly, does everybody have the cold brew in front of them? Devorah, do you want to talk about cold coffee in a can?
Yeah, this is kind of a new product for Equator. We are coffee roasters, and that's been our core competency for 26 years now. getting into the ready to drink business has been quite a learning curve, and we came up with needing to brew the coffee hot to maintain the flavors that we like in it, and then rapidly chilling it before canning. So you notice it's not a cold brew. You see a lot of cold brew on the shelves. This is not a cold brew coffee. This is a hot brewed coffee that was rapidly chilled. And the coffee we use in here is a blend. So whereas the last two we tried were single origins, really representing the terroir of where they're grown, the taste of that place, this blend is a coffee that tastes like coffee. We wanted to hit your palate kind of sequentially with a little bit of acid, some nice middle notes, and a base note. It's a 3-bean blend that we use in here. And yeah, we wanted to just be easy drinking. Again, sweet without sugar was our goal for this cold coffee. Still great if you want to add some simple syrup or some milk or something and make like a little iced latte. But our goal was to be very drinkable right out of the can. So I drink this differently. I don't swirl and I don't even aerate as much. I'll take a sip first and hold it in my mouth to let it almost warm up to the temperature of my mouth before swallowing. And then after I swallow is when I kind of breathe in, and that's when I feel like it opens up within my palate. So again, very drinkable coffee. This is coffee that tastes like coffee, right? We've got a little acid, but not too much. It's just lively on your tongue. Caramel, milk, chocolate, kind of that middle note, and ends with a little bit of bitter, but not overpowering, right? A clean finish. But you should taste it throughout your palate.
So we put this coffee over ice. Does that water down? I know when you order an iced coffee at a coffee shop, sometimes that gets watered down. Do we want to just have this straight out of the can?
Either way, as long as you're not letting it sit too long on the ice. But it is brewed a little bit strong because we do anticipate that folks are going to enjoy it over ice. So we go a little stronger than we would in like this type of brew.
Well, super refreshing. So let's try it with the Bay Blue. So once again, smell your cheese. I love to smell cheese because it's gonna get your taste buds kind of ready for what you're going to experience. And this you can smell. You can smell the sweetness. You can smell the savory. So we call Bay Blue your cheese course cheese because it is savory and sweet. This is a pasteurized cheese aged about 3 months. And this cheese came after Original Blue, which is what we're known for. That's our flagship, like Diana mentioned. We made Original Blue for the first 9 years, and that's all we made. So that's what everybody has known us for. But that is a classic kind of style of blue cheese that's got this bright milk flavor and then this pepper pungency. This is completely different. We want these sweet notes to come through. And what you're tasting is some mushroomy kind of earthy notes up front, a little umami, and then you kind of get this toasted malt, almost like you're in a brewery, like those grain malted toastedness. And then it goes into this sweetness into like a graham cracker or a salted caramel finish. And if you're actually tasting the cheese where it's more yellow, maybe towards the rind, you're going to get definitely kind of that brioche sweet bread kind of flavor, like a graham cracker. So to try that with the coffee, you're going to get a fudgy texture in your mouth with this cheese. Oh, I'm trying it with the Sumatra. I'm going back and forth.
You know, it's great with the Sumatra as well.
Because I have coffee notes. But it actually, I love this cold brew because it does have those chocolate.
Cold coffee.
Because it does have this chocolate note that comes out, and it complements the sweetness in the cheese and vice versa.
It just blows up the caramel notes for me.
Yeah.
In both.
Yeah. In both of them. This is, I don't know. They're all my favorite tasting pairing, but this one, yeah, they both get so sweet. And it's like, again, like a dessert, salted caramel. It's amazing.
And this shows too, we have all different types, varietals of cheeses here, from the aged Gouda to the young, soft ripened Quinta. And then, of course, a blue. You have to have a blue cheese on your plate just to kind of round it out. But what fantastic pairings here. Hey, can we get like a little survey of who liked which one the best? So, who liked, or put it in the chat.
No, she's doing a poll.
Oh, you're doing a poll?
Annie's doing a poll.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Everybody can vote anonymously.
Okay, this is great.
And you added
I
a
love
little
all
bit
of them.
of the chocolate with the baby blue and the cold
Yeah.
coffee. It's just,
Okay.
even takes it up the notch even more.
What was your favorite?
I don't know. I really liked the Quinta with the Sumatra. I think just that, creaminess in the Quinta that just kind of adds to the flavor of the coffee cheese. But it's hard to choose. It's like choosing a favorite one of our cheese.
And depending on what time of day or night you're having this, and that's what I love. And I think somebody said it in the chat, like you could have it for a brunch, you have it for a lunch, afternoon snack, or dinner. A dessert course even late at night. I just love that.
And the chocolate's just really fun to throw in there as a mix and match.
Oh, right.
We typically would do more of a milk chocolate pairing with Gouda. With the Bay Blue and the cold coffee, since that's where we were ending, we decided to throw in the Cho 68% dark chocolate disc, which I think, like Diane just said, it's a great just kind of, way to amp it up to even the next level.
Well,
and it's perfect for the afternoon.
If you're doing it as a dessert course too,
Mhm.
you have those different things that you're bringing together for people, and then we'll have a little bit to play with as well.
Yeah.
I love this combination.
Yeah. I have to say, these are our poll results. Amy, everyone can see those?
Yep.
Yep, everyone can see those. It's actually pretty even, but it looks like
Once
number
again,
one.
to the Gouda.
Once again, hard to choose.
Yes.
Yeah, hard to choose. Deborah, any other notes, anything you want to say about the pairings before we move on to the next part of our conversation?
Yeah, well, I would just say if you want to keep tasting and trying the different cheeses with different coffees, the Gouda with the cold coffee takes things totally a different way. Savory, bacony, makes the cold coffee taste very almost woodsy. It makes like an herby, woodsy quality come out in the cold coffee, which I don't taste otherwise. So I'm having fun mixing and matching too.
Absolutely.
That's really nice.
And we'll talk about it at the end, but for those of you on Facebook Live, and you maybe are frustrated because you don't have these cheeses and coffees in front of you, you can continue to purchase them for the next 10 days on our website. So you can still pick up the pack, or any of you following on Zoom and love this experience, you can either buy more for yourself or send it as a gift to someone or a coworker or
And it all comes together in one pack. The
Yep.
coffee and the 2 different coffees plus 1 can.
plus 1 can,
Yeah,
plus $10 of every purchase goes to La Cocina SF, which I was going to end with, but I'm just going to tell you right now, La Cocina SF is a fabulous nonprofit here in the Bay Area. It's based in San Francisco, and it is a food-based business incubator that really supports and focuses on female-owned startups, especially in the minority and people of color space. So please check out lacocinasf.org. You can see where your money is going. It is an association we have supported and partnered with in the past, and we will continue to do everything we can to provide for them through all sorts of events. And I know it was a cause near and dear to the folks at Equator as well. So you can buy cheese and coffee and give back and do good at the same time. So please continue to purchase until, I believe, March 17th. Those packs are available on our website. But yes, as Deborah said, continue to nibble and sip. We're going to get into a couple of questions here for the panelists about being women, strong women in business and as business owners and leaders in business. Deborah, we wanted to get your take on some things. Specifically, and Deborah, we'll start with you, some specific challenges maybe you have faced either at Equator or in your prior career that you felt were uniquely female. Some challenges either you experienced inside the business or in your external business environment.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like very lucky to work for a female founded and led company. That's why I've been here the last 10 years, because I do feel like my voice is heard here. But yeah, as a woman in the coffee space, I've applied for jobs that I was told I was too short for. I have been spoken over in coffee tastings, been not included in coffee tastings. Roasteries and roastery operations at many companies can be male dominated. And even just finding my voice at the tasting table and saying, oh, actually, I think I taste caramel in this coffee. Is that okay? Right? Felt like there was a barrier there. And I'm really lucky that I landed at such an inclusive company. That's why I've stayed. And I think it's worth listening to women. And there's been many times I've not been listened to. So,
Got it. Okay, Lynn and Diana, I as your sister and partner, I know the answers to some of these questions, but the folks watching don't. So you guys want to talk about your experience?
Well, I would say, traditionally in agriculture, and especially in dairying, it is definitely male dominated. I do want to give a big shout out to our father, who really went against the grain. And not only is it difficult for agriculturalists to pass on to the next generation because things have changed and evolved, and it's hard to accept change sometimes. However, our father not only did that to the next generation, us, but to women who we were not in the dairy business, we were not interested in that before we jumped into the cheese side. So big shout out to the strong men who want to incorporate the women in their lives. And then in cheese, I will say we're so fortunate because there are a lot of women in cheese, and those are really our inspirations. And there's quite a few just in the Bay Area that have helped us and inspired us, like Peg and Sue from Cowgirl, Mary Keene from Cypress Grove, Cindy Callahan from Bellwether. I mean, we can keep going. Jennifer Price at Redwood Hill. So many mentors for us. And so I will say that we are very fortunate in the cheese world. There's a lot of women cheesemakers that have made an impression.
Diana, what about you? Your background was in finance,
which is very heavily male dominated. So it was really refreshing when I came into the family business, and especially when I talked about the cheese industry, of seeing the camaraderie and the community that a lot of cheesemakers have in the industry, especially on the female side, that is really supportive of others getting into the space. So that was really nice. And I just want to give a shout out to not just in the industry, but also just the strong women in our own family, and especially our mom. I mean, we talk about, our dad being, I think he evolved over the years to the point of where he is, and really being proud and not accepting, but, really being a champion of us in terms of taking over the family business. But our mom was always there right behind him, and she was probably our biggest cheerleader and champion as far as really, being supportive of our success and really, helping us to get to that next level. I think her, giving us the encouragement to go out and find our own way and build up our own careers so that we had that to come back to the family business was really nice. So we've got some really strong female women within our own family that helped to pave the way.
Mm-hmm. So Devorah, speaking of inspiration, who are some of the women that have inspired you on your career path?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really lucky to work for three of them, right? The founders of Equator. And also, my local hero is Eileen Hasse, who runs Ritual Coffee Roasters. She gave me my start in the coffee industry, and it was a good start to have, because when I went to a company that was male-led, or I kind of saw this, normal way of treating women in the coffee industry, this was, almost 20 years ago now, I was like, no, it doesn't have to be that way, right? I work for a strong woman, and she's built a local empire that is really amazing to watch. She does really great things.
That's great. I was wondering, does Equator, being women-owned, do you have a special focus on either supporting or helping to build up some of your female-led customers? So some of your women chefs and restaurant owners, for example, and really trying to bring them along on your coffee journey together.
Gosh, I feel like we more are just honored when we get to partner with kind of luminary female chefs, right? I mean, Dominique Crenn does use our coffee in her restaurants, and that is just like an incredible partner to have. And Suzanne Gowan down in LA uses our coffee. So I think, yeah, female chefs definitely are being recognized, I think, currently for all the hard work they've had to do, kind of with elbows out in the kitchen, like, hey, I'm here working twice as hard and getting half the recognition. So we get excited when they choose us to partner with them because we want to be there. We're here for it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'd like to believe that one of the reasons they're interested in your coffee is not just because it tastes wonderful and it fits their profile needs, but it's because you represent a women-owned supplier of quality. And Lynn, who leads our sales team, you want to talk about how, it really helps our business in the trade, having the WeBank certification.
Right. And so a lot of our customers look for diversified spending. And more than ever, obviously in the last year or a couple of years, women-owned businesses are becoming more recognized. And it's nice. It's always good to know, where your product comes from and who are those people behind your product. And that's something that we emphasize because it becomes, a conversation about, our values and what we do here on the farm, and how we lead and what's important to us and how that matches with whether it's a retailer or a chef or you as a consumer have the power, the voice and the consumer in choosing brands that you want to support makes all the difference, I think. Mm-hmm. And so the WeBank certification, which is the women-owned that Diana mentioned earlier, just gives us a third-party certification stamp so that it fulfills some of that diversified spending with our larger companies, customers. But at the end of the day, it's people like Devorah that we so enjoy getting to know that represent their company so well and the products and the quality. That's number one. You have to make a great quality product. Number two is it's nice to be able to choose who you want to work with, who you want to sit at the table with. And there's so many strong, empowering women. And I'd just like to say for everybody, call somebody that you know today, a woman, and celebrate this month by calling and saying, thank you, you've been an inspiration to me in some way in your life. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think we do that enough. Mm-hmm. So
Here. Okay, one final question. Devorah, how does just being a woman in business affect your leadership internally?
Yeah, I think people who are socialized as women in America tend to look at things a bit more holistically, right? And throughout Equator's growth as a company, our founders and the other women in leadership look at every decision holistically, right? Yes, we want to buy the best coffee, but can we buy really great coffee that also supports women, that also goes to community projects for improving people's livelihoods? When we're deciding what to package our coffee in, well, it needs to protect the coffee, but can it also protect the environment at the same time, right? We look at every decision that we are making through a lens of using business as a force for good, and that came naturally to our founders. We did find the B Corp certification. That's given us a great framework for looking at that, like triple bottom line is B Corp lingo for people, environment, and profit. But that just has come naturally to us because every decision we make, we don't want to just do no harm. We want to actually do good with our business.
Mm-hmm. Diana, do you have a perspective on that question?
I think that's great too. Although we're not B Corp certified yet, it's definitely something we've talked a lot about and aspire to become that. But doing good for the community is really important. And I think one thing too, as a women-owned business, that we bring to the table is empathy. That's one thing that you see more in women, and I think certainly when we're talking about trying to take care of our employees and especially the working mother, and we bring a little bit more empathy in that conversation and kind of how we position policies and whatnot to make sure we're taking care of as many of our employees as we can.
Because we're there with them.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
or we've been there.
Yep, been there. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
this is fun.
I know this was fun. I think it's time to wrap up. Any final questions out there? You can put them into the chat or Anybody want to raise their hand? We can unmute you. Oh, yes, we do. There we go. Hi, Alex.
Hey guys, I just wanted to say thank you guys to all of you women who are inspiring to all of us in the industry. And this has been great. I'm a cheese consumer myself, so this has been a lot of fun and I love learning about it. So I'm going to use all my extra to host a little event, hopefully this week with some girls and educate them on the background of all these cheeses. So thank you guys for everything.
You're very welcome. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks.
Anyone else want to ask a question? You can raise your hand. Okay. No. Deborah, any final comments or thoughts?
This was such a pleasure. I'm so happy to share coffee and cheese with everyone who dialed in today. It's been a learning experience for me as well. So I hope you all learned something and take something away from this.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, and those of you that are zooming in from out of the area, I'm sure you can get on equatorcoffees.com and buy any of these roasts that we tasted or any of the additional roasts or the decaf versions. They also have some great cafes throughout Northern California. I know that I like to stop at, and so please support them. And you're supporting women-owned business at the same time. So say hi to Deborah if you see her. You guys, what do you want to say?
No, thanks. This has been really fun. But I think we really enjoyed learning something more about coffee ourselves.
Yeah, no, this is actually my new favorite pairing. So Deborah, we're gonna have to get together and do this again very soon. But here's a toast to all the women in everyone's lives. And here's to you.
Yes.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Have a great day. And like Lynn said, call up a girlfriend or a daughter or a
mother and aunt,
a boss, and let them know you care.
Happy International Women's Day.
Bye-bye.